It took me 9 years to accompany Alexander from an unknown teenager to a rising star in the business world. I rented a small apartment with him, less than 10 square meters, and accompanied him to all kinds of social events to help him expand his network. I even got a lot of stomach problems for the company. Isabella, just wait for me a little longer. When I succeed, I will definitely make you the happiest person in the world. I don't quite remember which night it was, but Alexander suddenly said those words to me. I just remember that his eyes were shining, and he was full of me. So, despite everyone's dissuasion, I resolutely threw myself into this relationship. Unexpectedly, a month before our wedding, he betrayed me, making my once sincere heart worthless. I leaned against the sink in the bathroom, gently rubbed my aching stomach, looked up in the mirror, and found that my face was a little red. My assistant Emily was outside, asking in a worried tone, "Isabella, are you okay?" I replied that I was fine and opened the door, but I was a little unsteady on my feet. "Isabella, here are the hangover and stomach medicine. I'll get you a cup of hot water." As I spoke, I took Emily's wrist and swallowed the pills in her hand directly. "Don't bother. Those old foxes can't hold on much longer." I rubbed my forehead, looked at the time on my wrist, and let out a sigh of relief. Half an hour should be enough. I leaned against Emily, slowly walked out of the box, straightened out my wrinkled clothes, put on a suitable smile, and opened the door to the box. "Hang in there, Isabella. This project is important to both Alexander and the Anderson Group." After seeing off the partners, I almost couldn't stand up. Leaning against Emily, I felt my stomach ache so badly it felt like it was going to burst. I gasped heavily and my voice was hoarse with exhaustion. I said, "Don't go home first. Take me to that dessert shop in Moonlight Bay." After saying this, I relaxed and let Emily help me into the car. My hands were clenched white as I covered my stomach, and my head was dizzy as I leaned against the back seat. Isabella, we've arrived at this place." Emily gently shook my arm, her tone gentle, her eyes a little worried. She held up the hot milk tea and medicine in her hand and spoke a little embarrassed. "I saw that you kept covering your stomach, so I specially bought some medicine and hot milk tea. You should feel better after drinking it." Hearing these words, my thoughts slowly became clearer, and the pain in my stomach miraculously eased. I felt warm and fuzzy inside. "Thank you so much today. I still have some things to take care of. If I remember correctly, your home seems to be nearby. It's getting late, so you should go home first. I'll reimburse you for the bus fare, and I'll call a designated driver later." After saying this, I got out of the car, took the milk tea and medicine from Emily's hands, smiled at her, and then walked towards the dessert shop. I wondered in my heart if the 9th anniversary commemorative cake had been made yet. Thinking about this, I couldn't help quickening my pace. But when I looked up at the entrance to the shop, I felt as if my feet were nailed to the ground and I couldn't move. The milk tea and pills slipped from my fingers. Pedestrians on the street looked at me, but I didn't notice them at all, just staring at the two people sitting in the store. It was Alexander and a strange young woman. I froze, feeling like I had lost all feeling in my body. My ears buzzed, and after the shock, my mind went blank. No way, absolutely not. Maybe Alexander was having dinner with friends, or they were discussing something else. I instinctively wanted to avoid that unpleasant thought and desperately looked for reasons to convince myself that I had chosen the right partner. As the tears kept falling, I realized what had happened. I hurriedly took my phone out of my bag, my fingers shaking. I held the phone to my ear, but I couldn't seem to hear the clear dial tone. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heart, getting faster and faster, as if it were going to jump out of my chest. "Hello, honey, what's wrong?" Alexander's voice came through the phone, still full of the deep affection and persistence I knew so well. It sounded no different than it had 9 years ago. But the man in front of me was no longer the shy, eager teenager who had looked at me with such intensity when we were 17. I was still standing here, but it felt as if I had been pulled into a twisted, desperate world. It felt strange to be torn between the boy with the burning gaze when I was 17 and the Alexander who was now in the shop, holding another woman. I wondered if he was thinking about me. He had said he would come back when he had finished with the company, and that he loved me. The phone had hung up, but I felt like a masochist as I stared at the two people in the shop. I saw the girl turn her face away a little angrily, and Alexander stroke her head helplessly, revealing a hint of a helpless smile. He reached out and pulled her into his arms, comforting her softly. "My dear, When I've made something of myself, I'll make things easier for you. I'll make you the happiest person in the world. I suddenly remembered what Alexander had said to me when I was 23, sitting by the roadside after a summer evening of business talks. At that time, the moonlight was shining down, and I felt as if we would grow old together. At that time, he also held me in his arms like he is doing now, his eyes full of pain and love, hugging me like the most precious treasure in the world. How did it turn out like this? A huge sense of powerlessness and confusion welled up in my heart, making me feel unable to cope. My eyes began to burn a little, and I could only helplessly cover my face, crouching down as tears quietly trickled down my fingers. Alexander said he was tired of you and that I was the one he loved most now. I saw the message pop up on my phone and I trembled with anger. I looked up and caught the provocative gaze of someone. After locking eyes with me, she gave a smug smile and then kissed the man in her arms. I quickly looked away, not daring to turn around and think about how they were being intimate. Just thinking about the man who had once kissed me now leaning close to another woman, the pain felt like it was spreading from the bottom of my heart, making me feel so bad. I don't really remember how I got home. I slumped onto the sofa like a walking corpse, my eyes staring blankly at the ceiling, as the images of the past and present mingled in my mind. The pain in my body and the distress in my heart made me feel a little dazed. In a trance, I seemed to see again that summer 9 years ago, and the boy walking towards me with a magnolia flower in his hands. Seeing the nervousness and passion in the young boy's eyes, I couldn't hold back the injustice in my heart any longer. My mouth opened, but only a weak cry escaped, and tears kept falling. I watched him nervously run over to the girl not far away, who was facing away from him. He grabbed the hem of her shirt with both hands, turned his face to the side, took a few deep breaths, and his outstretched hand trembled slightly. "Isabella, I like you." The girl turned around, revealing delicate eyebrows and eyes. Although she was a little shy, she also had a little girl's willfulness. She was clearly already crazy about him, but she was still insisting on the 99-day test. She said, "If you can accept all my tests for 99 days, I will agree to marry you." Back then, Alexander was willing to run all over the city to find a certain mango pudding because she said she wanted to eat it. He would also remember her various tastes and preferences, such as her liking for spicy food, milk tea with 70% sugar, strawberry milk from the school canteen every afternoon, and her pocket was always filled with her favorite strawberry-flavored candy. "Alexander, I'm actually a very stingy person. You know that." "Why? Why is that?" I was curled up on the sofa in agony, unable to hold back the emotions welling up inside me, and finally I let out a sob. "Honey, why are you sleeping here?" I opened my eyes and saw Alexander hurrying over to me. He put the cake he was holding on the table and then picked me up and carried me towards the bedroom. After putting me on the bed, he placed my feet in his lap and gently covered them with his hands. Watching Alexander do that familiar action, I felt a little bit of sadness in my heart and stared at him blankly. A few years ago, when the company was not yet listed, we didn't have much money and could only squeeze into a small basement, which was freezing cold in winter. I am small and a bit afraid of the cold, and my feet would freeze like ice. He always helped me warm them. At that moment, as I looked at Alexander, who was hidden in the shadows, I suddenly felt as if the past had become blurred. "Honey, you were great today. Michael has already received a request for cooperation from that company." I didn't respond, but just stared at him quietly, trying to see if his eyes were sincere or not. Alexander saw that I didn't respond, so he leaned over to kiss me, just as he always did. But when I leaned down, a strong perfume smell hit my nose, and a feeling of nausea welled up in my heart. I couldn't help but turn my face to the side and start retching. The person next to me froze for a moment, hesitated for a moment, and then patted my back gently. But I felt like I had touched something unclean, and I suddenly dodged his hand. Alexander paused for a moment, then his tone softened. He reached out and took my somewhat cold fingertips in his hand, half crouching down to look me in the eye. "I know I was wrong, honey, but the company has been really busy lately, and I haven't been able to find the time to spend with you. Please don't be mad at me, okay?" Hearing this, I smiled softly, my heart tightening. I pushed Alexander's hand away and turned my face away. No time to spend with me? Isabella, what are you trying to say? Alexander has become increasingly successful in the business world over the past few years, and no one has ever disappointed him like this. His eyebrows and eyes looked impatient, his lips were slightly pursed, and the tenderness in his eyes had disappeared, replaced by a certain coldness. Do you still love me? After I said this, I kept staring at Alexander, hoping to see a little guilt and reluctance in his eyes, but the more I looked, the more I felt my heart ache, and tears welled up in my eyes. His face before me, the changes over the years, seemed to have become blurred in this thick fog. I'm sorry, honey, of course I love you. It's all because I've been so busy with work that you've had this misunderstanding. Alexander hugged me tightly, his breath surrounding me like a cocoon, making me feel that he was a little worried that I would leave. Honey, our wedding is next month, and the big contract has already been negotiated. Just rest assured and prepare for our wedding at home. We can go on holiday to your favorite island, and the wedding venue will be decorated with your favorite Yulon magnolias and gypsophila. But I still can't ignore the company's affairs. I interrupted Alexander's words, my face expressionless, my tone a little cold. Alexander's gentleness disappeared, and his gaze became a little cold. He said, Isabella, why can't you be as obedient as you used to be? You've become too strong now. You're not the same as you used to be. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh, but the more I laughed, the sadder I felt, and tears came out of my eyes without me realizing it. Am I really that strong? If I'm not strong, then how did we get those orders? If I'm not tough, what about those people who have intentions towards the company? Suddenly, it became quiet around me, and everyone refused to give in. At this time, Alexander's phone rang in his pocket. I saw his face soften suddenly, as if he were a little uneasy. He moved his fingers slightly, not daring to look me in the eye, and said only, let's calm down. Then he hurriedly picked up his clothes and walked out. Alexander, do you remember what you said that night 7 years ago when we were together? You said that you would only love me and only me for the rest of your life. Alexander's footsteps towards the outside stopped for a moment, and then he left without hesitation, his back growing farther and farther away. I stared blankly at the closed door, smiling foolishly, not knowing how long it had been. The subtle pain in my heart mingled with the pressure in my stomach. I clenched my teeth as hard as I could, almost unable to suppress the tremor in my throat. My fingers interlocked to hide the tears on my face. As the pain in my stomach grew, I struggled to get up and go get my phone, which was not far away. I dialed the topmost number with trembling hands. When I spoke, my voice was hoarse with sobs. Alexander, I really hurt. After I said this with difficulty, I fainted. In a daze, I opened my eyes and saw Alexander standing in front of me, hugging a girl. He told me that he had fallen in love with someone else, and then he slowly walked away with the girl in his arms. A feeling of shock and pain filled my heart. I sadly chased after them, shouting at the top of my lungs, no, Alexander. I suddenly opened my eyes, only to realize that my hand was pressed so hard that I couldn't move it. I looked to the side and saw Alex sleeping next to me, with dark circles under his eyes, holding my hand tightly. I quietly looked at him, my eyes depicting the person who had occupied my youth and made my first love. His once delicate face had become more mature over the years, and his temperament had become a little sharper. Even though he was quietly leaning there with his eyes closed, his aura was still strong. It's obviously the same face, but now it feels so strange, really changed, everything has changed. I turned my head and moved my fingers, trying to pull my hand out, but I felt the hand that was holding me suddenly tighten. Alexander, who was sleeping next to us, was awakened. When he saw me, he let out a sigh of relief and held me tightly in his arms. His body was a little shaky and there was a hint of fear in his voice. He said, Isabella, I dreamed that you had gone and left me. I was stunned and didn't say anything, but when I felt the tears he had shed on my neck, my body instantly froze, and a pang of sadness welled up in my heart, and I almost burst into tears. Alexander, do you really love me? You stay here, I'll go get the doctor. After saying this, he squeezed the palm of my hand and then hurriedly ran out, walking a bit unsteadily. I leaned against the hospital bed and watched Alexander's figure as he left. I was a little hesitant, but finally closed my eyes and stopped talking to the lawyer. After waiting for a while, a doctor came in. I turned my head and looked around, but I didn't see Alexander. After hesitating for a while, I asked the doctor where Alexander had gone. The doctor said that he had just come to see me, but as soon as he left the room, he got a phone call. It sounded like a girl crying, and then he left in a hurry. The expression on my face turned cold, my fingers unconsciously clenched around the phone, and I smiled, but there was no smile in my eyes. Ms. Isabella, I'm sorry to tell you that the cancer cells in your stomach have already begun to spread. It's now in the intermediate stage, but there is still a chance of a cure. Was the gentleman just now a family member of yours? The signature of a family member is required for hospitalization and surgery. We couldn't get through to your home phone. Do you have any other family members? I walked aimlessly along the road, the doctor's words echoing in my head, but I felt nothing. It was as if my heart was blocked by a tangled mess, completely unable to think, leaving only helplessness and confusion. I should be crying, but maybe I've already used up all my tears these past few days. At the moment, I can't even squeeze out a single tear. It's like an empty shell with an emptied soul, wandering around. Home should be a place that makes people feel warm. But can it still be called home now? I suddenly feel extremely tired. A great sense of powerlessness has bound me like an invisible net. All my strength has been sucked away, and I can only accept this helplessly and calmly. I walked, and when I came to my senses, I had already arrived at the front door of the house that Alexander and I bought 4 years ago when we earned our first big fortune. The title to this house is registered in my name. The moment I received the property ownership certificate, he picked me up and said that he would let me live in a bigger and better house in the future. It was true. Our company grew bigger and bigger, and we moved from one house to a bigger place. We seemed to have more and more things, but we spent less and less time together. I looked at the one small house in a daze, and the memories of those days came back to me, planting roses in the garden with friends, playing together, and sitting in the yard at night watching the stars. However, the garden is now full of withered roses and weeds. Now, whether it's Alexander or this deserted garden, everything seems to remind me that the good old days are gone forever, leaving only those vague memories that pierce my heart and make it ache. I hesitate to step into the yard, my hand gently gliding over the deck chair where we used to sit together, touching the swing he made for me and the magnolia tree he planted especially for me. He left me the card in the house, and then told me that he and his wife were getting married. Sophia, it's over. Hearing this voice that sounded so familiar, I gripped the doorknob. Alexander, I love you so much. Please don't leave me. I won't compete with her. I don't ask for much. I just want to be with you sometimes. Didn't you say she only cares about work? She doesn't give you any dignity as a man. Alexander, please don't abandon me. You know I don't have a career like her, with a company. You're the only one in my heart. I'm sorry, I don't really feel like kissing you right now. Listening to the sounds of kissing and music coming from the room, I felt a little confused, took 2 steps back, and felt a little pain in my heart. So this is how he has always seen me. I can't find my self-respect and seek it elsewhere, which really makes me feel uncomfortable and unacceptable. I couldn't control my emotions, so I hurriedly ran to the garden next door and started vomiting, feeling as if I wanted to vomit my bile as well. My stomach burned intensely, but the pain and nausea in my heart made me feel even worse. I held onto a tree trunk with my fingers slightly curled up, and a feeling of numbness and powerlessness welled up in my heart. Something had to come to an end. It was dark inside, and suddenly it lit up, and the light hurt my eyes a little. I looked up and saw Alexander standing in the doorway, dressed in a different suit, looking a little surprised. He asked, "Wife, why have you come back? Are you feeling well? If you really cared about me, you would have gone to see the doctor a long time ago, not just now." I sat down on the sofa, said coldly, and threw a cold, emotionless look at Alexander. "I'm very tired from work today. Can you leave me alone?" Alexander helplessly rubbed his forehead and spoke with some impatience. I couldn't help laughing when I heard this, and I felt disgust when I saw the clothes Alexander had changed into. After a long time, I suddenly asked, "What would you do if I was diagnosed with terminal cancer at the hospital today?" I looked at Alexander quietly, but secretly hoped that this young man would not be so completely changed by time. How could you have become so difficult to understand that you would joke about yourself like this? Hearing this, I let go of my clenched fingers, and the little hope I had in my heart disappeared. Instead, I felt like laughing, but I just couldn't. "Honey, don't say things like that anymore. You know I really can't do without you. I know it was my fault for leaving suddenly today. I'll go call the doctor now to ask about your condition. Don't be mad, okay?" Alexander's tone softened a little, and he sat down next to me, wanting to hug me. With his other hand, he started dialing the hospital's number. I tilted my head to the side, suddenly a little curious about how he would react if he heard that I had intermediate gastric cancer. Would he be sad? Or indifferent? Or happy? The phone hadn't connected yet when the door opened by itself. Alexander and I looked over together and saw Sophia standing there. I took a good look at the girl who had not yet graduated from university. She was exactly as described in the survey, quite ambitious and resourceful. "Alexander, you forgot your keys and documents." Hearing this, Alexander's expression relaxed slightly. He got up in a hurry, without looking at me again, and just hurriedly said that he had to deal with company matters, and then pulled Sophia out the door. As I said before, Alexander no longer loves you, and now he loves me. There was also a photo of her and Alexander lying naked together at the back of the message. I couldn't help but laugh at this childish message proclaiming ownership. At that moment, I opened my phone and dialed the lawyer's number. "Please help me sort out all the shares in my name as soon as possible and draw up a share transfer agreement." I didn't expect my brother to come looking for me and find out about my illness. When I saw him sitting in the back seat of the car holding a hospital bill and asking me what it was, I couldn't hold back the fear and grievance in my heart anymore, and tears fell. Daniel's tone suddenly became very gentle. He carefully held me in his arms, patted my back gently like when I was a child, his voice trembling with pain. "How did you get so thin?" These words suddenly made all the grievances and pain in my heart well up. I couldn't help but cry in my brother's arms, as if I wanted to cry out all my recent troubles. "Isabella, let's go home, and I'll take you abroad for treatment, okay?" I calmed down a bit, broke free from my brother's arms, my eyes a little red and swollen, and shook my head gently. "Brother, can you give me 2 more days? That guy is not worth it at all. Are you really so stubborn as to be at this point? I didn't stop you when you sneaked back from abroad, and I couldn't persuade you to give up on that boy, even though you suffered so much. That guy has caused you so much pain. What are you waiting for?" My brother's tone was full of anger, and his eyes turned red as he choked up and couldn't speak. He stroked my head, his tone tinged with pleading. My brother had long said that Alexander was not someone to be trusted. Coming from a family like that, he is capable but ambitious, and his views on sincerity are questionable. I understand that I have no regrets about my past choices, but this time I will definitely not back down. I just want to transfer the shares I have in hand during this period of time. After all, the company is also half of my hard work, and I don't want to give it up easily. My brother saw the determination in my eyes, sighed, and then gently patted my head. He said, "You must be determined yourself, but the illness cannot be delayed. At most, we will leave in 2 days." After arranging for my brother to stay at a hotel, I felt relieved. With more confidence and a sense of stability, I began to prepare to handle my real estate and other assets. The phone rang. I looked at it, answered it, and then threw it aside without saying a word. A few seconds later, I heard Alexander's voice on the other end of the line. It sounded a little low and a little aggrieved. He said, "Honey, are you still mad at me? You haven't called me in a long time." I didn't respond, still silently sorting through the assets that could be sold, but he on the other end started to nag. "Honey, it was really my fault for being in a bad mood the other day. I was actually really scared, so I overreacted to those words and really couldn't accept that as a possibility. You know I don't like joking about being sick. I was really nervous. I didn't respond to you, just gave a little laugh, but you weren't impatient at all, with an attitude like when we first got together, tolerating my little temper. Our wedding is getting closer. When can you come and try on the wedding dress with me? I had it custom made from abroad, and you'll love it." He waited a long time for me to speak on the phone before finally hanging up slowly. It was evening when I finished sorting through the information. I felt a little sticky. When I went to the bathroom to take off my clothes, I saw a scar on my stomach and froze. It was only after I started dating Alexander that I gradually understood his family background. His father liked to gamble and often beat people up, while his mother was weak and money-oriented. In high school, he always looked a little thinner than the others. Later, I learned that he had been working part-time, earning just enough to pay for tuition and barely enough for living expenses, often going hungry day after day. I felt so much pain when I heard this, but I knew that he was quite proud and didn't want to accept my help. So I tried to find ways to bring him more food from home, and finally managed to make him gain a little weight. One night, Alexander walked me home. His parents happened to be there, asking for money. At that time, Alexander had no money at all, but he just protected me behind him, telling me to run quickly and block in front of me, trying to cover the 2 pairs of greedy eyes. Later, it seems that his father was so angry that he took out a fruit knife to scare us. At that time, I was worried that Alexander would get hurt, so I rushed up to protect him. This was the first time I saw him cry. He had experienced a lot of suffering in the past, but he had never shed a tear. This time, he cried because I was hurt. I should have felt pain, but instead my heart felt warm because he cared about me, and I even forgot my own pain. I felt heartbroken at his tears. Later, his parents were sentenced for intentional assault, and we got through these difficult days together. It seemed that everything was slowly getting better. I smiled bitterly and touched the scar on my stomach. After a long hesitation, I decided to make an appointment with a tattoo parlor for a home service. "Miss, the flower you chose is really pretty. What kind of flower is it?" As I watched the tattoo artist gradually cover up the scar, I felt an excitement in my heart, as if I were about to be reborn. I smiled and then spoke slowly. After the blooming of the tea-scented flowers, and when the flower season was over and the dust had settled, I wondered how many things had happened. After hanging up on my best friend Alexander a few times, I answered the phone a little helplessly, my face full of impatience. "Sis, Alexander is drunk and keeps shouting your name. Why don't you come over and pick him up?" I sighed, looked at the time, got up from the bed. When I arrived, I saw Alexander sitting on the street surrounded by a group of people. After I got out of the car, I saw a little girl not far away, surrounding him. "Sophia, I'm warning you, don't think about things you shouldn't. Think about how long your sister-in-law and Alexander have been together, almost 10 years. Think about it yourself, don't make a fool of yourself." I couldn't help but laugh when I heard Alexander say this, but the next second he embraced me. A feeling of disgust welled up in my heart, and I instinctively pushed him away, then rubbed the place where he had touched me and whispered, "That's disgusting." Everyone saw me suddenly appear and looked at Sophia a little unnaturally. "Honey, do you not love me anymore? Before, you told me you loved me every day, but lately you haven't said it anymore." Alexander sat down on the ground, looking up at me with red eyes. His expression was the same as before, but I felt no heartache, only endless disgust. "I no longer have feelings for you, and I don't think you're clean enough." I looked at Alexander, who was the complete opposite of me. Tears kept welling up in his eyes, and they were about to fall. After saying this, I stopped looking at the expressions of the others and turned and left. Sitting in the car, I looked at the news on my phone about the arrival of shares and assets, and when I raised my eyebrows, I made a phone call. "Brother, everything is settled. Let's set off tomorrow." Alexander rubbed his forehead, slowly coming to his senses, and looked around for my figure. When he saw Sophia coming out of the kitchen in her pajamas, he asked in a somewhat cold tone, "Why are you here?" "This is Isabella's home. Get out." Sophia's face turned pale when she heard this, and a hint of sadness could be heard in her tone. "Alexander, last night you called so many times and she didn't answer. I'm the one who brought you home. Can't you show me a little kindness?" Alexander's face turned gloomy, and he didn't respond to her. At that moment, he sat down at the dining table and just received a call from Michael. "Someone came to the company today and said he was our director. He said Isabella had sold all her shares to him." Alexander dropped the spoon in his hand onto the table with a sharp clatter. He seemed to have not heard the question clearly and asked again, then suddenly stood up, spilling his soup bowl and porridge all over the floor. He said incredulously, "This is impossible. This company is the result of our hard work over the years, and Isabella also regarded it as important as I did. She could not have sold her shares. Find out where this person got the shares from." Alexander yelled angrily, looking very agitated. His hands trembled as he dialed my number. He kept repeating the word impossible, pacing back and forth in a state of agitation, like a frantic pursuer who had lost something important. The phone kept ringing unanswered. Alexander became more and more anxious, pacing back and forth, his fingers slightly trembling. Just then, the phone finally rang. Alexander's eyes lit up, and he picked up the phone with anticipation. "Hello, sir. Are you a family member of Ms. Isabella? Her stomach cancer is very serious, and we recommend that you take her to the hospital for treatment as soon as possible." The phone in his hand slowly slipped from his hand, and he froze. Suddenly, his whole body began to tremble, and then he slapped himself hard, kneeling on the ground, covering his face and beginning to cry. "I'm sorry. It's all my fault." Seeing this, Sophia quickly went to help Alexander, but he unexpectedly pushed her to the ground and asked harshly while choking her, "Did you tell Isabella? Otherwise, Why would she suddenly sell her shares and disappear? Sophia's face was dark and lifeless, and she was choking so hard that tears were falling from her eyes as she spoke with great difficulty. I did this because, I love you. Alexander gave a contemptuous smile, his mood gloomy. He casually pushed Sophia away and looked down at her, his eyes undisguisedly threatening. You'd better pray that I can find Isabella. Otherwise I'll make you suffer. I wasn't actually at all surprised that Alexander could find me, because he knew in high school that I had no relatives other than my brother, and now he would definitely be with my brother. I never imagined that the Alexander the first saw would turn out like this, which was really surprising. In just 2 months, he seems to have aged a decade. He has lost weight and his spirits are not as good as before. It feels like life has weighed him down and he can't breathe. I have been in the hospital for chemotherapy for the past 2 months. Although the cancer cells are under control, my mood has gradually improved, which has also helped slow the spread of the cancer cells. Now, there is about a 70% chance of a cure through surgery. The doctor suggested that I go home and rest first, and that I can have the operation when I'm feeling better. Isabella, don't look at this unpleasant thing, so as not to affect your mood. My brother tidied up the clothes on my body a bit, protected me on his side, walked towards the villa together, and waved for the butler to get that person out. Isabella, I was wrong. Can you forgive me? Hearing this, a flash of dissatisfaction flashed in my brother's eyes. He gently put me in a chair, then helped me button up my shirt, and turned to Alexander and punched him. He said angrily, "How dare you come to my sister and make her like this? I can't believe it. I've already spared you for Isabella's sake, but if you come near her again, I won't let you off the hook." My brother wiped his hands a little resentfully, then threw the silk scarf at Alexander. Isabella, have you forgotten our old days together? I love you, but you are too good at everything. I really don't know if I can let you stay, and I don't know why you like me. These words made me stop in my tracks. I let out a low laugh, then turned around and stared coldly at Alexander. There was no warmth in my eyes, and my voice was so cold that it felt piercing. I forgot. Alexander, who exactly has forgotten? I slowly walked up to him, stood in front of him, and looked down at Alexander, my heart filled with disgust and resentment. While I was out drinking and bleeding from my stomach over business matters, what were you doing? You were fooling around with your little lover. On our 9th anniversary, I went to pick up the custom-made cake, and I saw you hugging someone else in the cake shop where we had pledged our love. What were you doing while I was alone in the hospital being diagnosed? You were with her, weren't you? You probably don't know that I actually went to the house where we used to live that day. Do you remember what you did with her? Alexander shook his head at first, then nodded, his teeth clenched together with a rattling sound, staring straight at me. He wanted to explain, but couldn't find the words, looking a little lost and helpless. Seeing him like this didn't move me at all, but annoyed me. Alexander, do you remember the warning I gave you when I agreed to go out with you? Didn't I tell you that I was very sensitive? Don't let me down. Do you know how I feel when I look at you? I'm smiling, but my eyes are full of disgust and hostility. This is terrible. Alexander froze when he heard this, as if something had broken quietly inside him. I could almost hear his soul crying out in silence. But what does that have to do with me? Alexander was silent for a long time, and I didn't want to argue with him anymore. When I turned around to leave, Alexander said calmly, "I'm sorry, Isabella, I won't bother you again." I paused after hearing this, took my brother's hand and walked slowly forward, never looking back. 6 months later, I heard news about Alexander again. Alexander went back to drinking and even stopped taking care of his company. His friends tried to persuade him at first, but they eventually gave up. His parents had probably behaved well in prison and were released early. Sophia's affair with a junior colleague had become a big scandal at university, and she had been expelled. Alexander had also broken up with her. Later, I don't know how Sophia got in touch with his parents, but the couple got together to drug him in an attempt to get pregnant and take over his position. What's even more surprising is that his parents went abroad for less than a month and racked up huge debts. Knowing that Alexander would not care if they lived or died, they stole the company's secrets and sold them to a competitor. The company went bankrupt, and Alexander disappeared without a trace. As I read this, I couldn't help but glance back at my brother, who was pretending to work nearby. Brother, stop pretending. Were you involved in this? I wasn't involved much. If anyone's to blame, it's his parents for being so cruel and letting him treat my sister like that. My brother saw that I was unhappy, and his voice slowly trailed off. I sighed helplessly and walked over to the sofa by the window and sat down. All that had happened was in the past, and there was no need to cause trouble again. But I was still quite happy to see them punished. As I'd said before, I was just as petty as my brother. The papers on the table rustled in the wind. I stood up and walked over to the window to close it. Then I suddenly saw a 17-year-old boy in school uniform waving at me. I heard him say to me, "Don't forgive him. Keep walking and don't look back."